It is when I'm listening to particular passages of songs, music, a particular sensation will occur. So it feels as though somebody's sort of brushing past me like this. So it's like that sensation you might feel on your skin from air pressure, if that makes sense. So it doesn't feel like someone's actually touching my skin, but more like the air around it is shifting somehow. And I have that sensation in particular songs, and it's always the same part of the song, and it's always the same sensation.
Join the Discovering Your Mind Facebook group and enjoy discussions, ask questions, and participate in the podcast in fun and unique ways. Aphantasia is a condition characterized by an inability to visualize mental images in one's mind. If you have just discovered that you or someone you love has aphantasia, or if you're just fascinated by the subject in general and love learning more about it, you are in the right place. The Discovering Your Mind podcast delves into all aspects of the mind's eye, including aphantasia, hyperphantasia, and everything in between. Welcome to the Discovering Your Mind podcast, brought to you by shanesbraindomain.com. I am your host, Shane Williams, also known as Shane's Brain. And today I'm joined by my co-host, Cole Williams. Hi, Cole.
Hi. Where are we?
We're here.
Oh, okay.
And today we are talking with the one and only Nikki O'Connor, who is coming to us all the way from tomorrow. How you doing there, Nikki?
Yeah, it's great over here.
All right, so it's around 6:00 p.m. on a Saturday night for Cole and I. What time is it over there in New Zealand?
It's a Sunday at 2 p.m.
Ah, nice Sunday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me if I've gotten my homework done yet?
You do an amazing job. Yep. You're going to do so well on that all-nighter.
Thank you.
All right, Nikki. Well, it's good to have you on the show. We're excited to have you. Can you start out just by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do for a living?
Yeah, sure. So I live in Gisborne in Te Tairāwhiti, which is in the North Island of Aotearoa, New Zealand. And I used to be a school teacher, actually, and now I am a creative arts psychotherapist. So I've been really lucky to have two different careers. Yeah, so currently I'm practicing as an arts therapist.
Okay. Can you tell us a little more about what that is?
Yeah, sure. So creative arts therapy is much like traditional psychotherapy in the sense that it's a form of psychotherapy, but rather than using talk as the primary element in therapy, we use creativity. And so this could be across many different modalities. The ones that I've been trained in or use include visual arts, obviously, and all the different presentations of visual art, as well as sound and music, dance and movement and drama. And I also use sand play therapy as well. Lots of people ask about, well, how does it work and things like that. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. It uses creativity within a therapeutic relationship. So the therapeutic relationship you have with the person or people that you're working with is really fundamental to the therapy itself. And part of that is maintaining and establishing trust with that person, allowing them to be themselves. We try in arts therapy as much as possible to be non-judgmental so that it feels like a really safe space for the person that you're working with. Obviously, it's experiential in the fact that it's not just sitting down and talking. We're most of the time making something. So that might be making soundscapes, or it might be making or drawing or painting or sculpting. It might be moving and creating role play to practice skills. So there's always usually an active component to what we do. And we know that for lots of children in particular, so I work with children mostly, sometimes they don't always have the words to express something that may have happened to them. And also, sometimes they don't want to talk about it. Having the arts at your fingertips allows them to find another way of expressing and communicating. It might feel like a big jumble to them. And so the arts also enables them to kind of I don't know, create a collage of what's going on for them, because often we know that feelings are multidimensional, multi-layered, and the arts allow us to do that. And sometimes we actually join the arts together, so they might create something, but from that, we use movement to explore that in different ways. It's really quite a dynamic way of working. We always value the process over the product. And so it's not about what you've created. It's not about that end product. It's about the journey that we go on as we create that, and the things that we discover about ourselves, the ways that we solve problems while we're creating, the ways that we are resourceful. The product becomes less important in arts therapy. You might come up with something really cool at the end of it, but actually we value the process more. I think imagination, which is so fascinating in the context of talking about aphantasia as well, imagination becomes a resource for people in arts therapy. So we utilize that as a way to give us new perspective, or to gain insight, to see alternatives. So that's a little bit about arts therapy and how it works.
Okay, that's very interesting.
That's fascinating.
So do you feel like that is a good alternative to regular therapy for people with aphantasia in particular?
I think what arts therapists might need to be aware of is that some people do have aphantasia, which means that perhaps some of the visualizations, or like often we'll do things like we'll invite the person that we're working with to create a safe space, an internal safe space, and that might include all of the senses. So being aware that actually some people can't necessarily see, or they may not also be able to conjure up smells or sensations or hear things either. So we have to be really aware that there may be restrictions or limitations there for people.
Yeah. And I love what you said of sometimes children don't always, they don't always talk about their issues the way an adult normally would. And I work with a lot of children with autism. And something we notice a lot is, sometimes they even can't communicate what they're feeling or communicate much at all. And giving that extra outlet for communication sounds like it would be very influential for a lot of different populations.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things that I find useful in those sorts of situations is sometimes we just might co-regulate together, and that might be through rhythm. So we might, it might be through drumming where we're making the same beat at the same time, and that becomes a form of communication and connecting. And also sometimes there might be other ways, like bouncing balls together at the same time. That's another way of establishing co-regulation.
Wow.
Yeah. So no words required in any of those things. Yeah.
That's awesome. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that later. What about other things? What else do you like to do for fun? What other interests and hobbies do you have?
I'm pretty obsessed with music. So I'm in a few bands, and I like to make mixtapes. And in fact, just last night, I went to 2 different parties and played records. So yeah, I'm all about music, really. Probably a little too obsessed with it. What else do I like to do? I love watching documentaries and listening to shipwreck tales.
Do you play any instruments?
A couple. My favorite is the Omnichord, which is a 1980s synthesizer. It's a really kooky little machine. I've got a couple of them, and one of them has copper touch plates on it, which just adds extra elements of distortion. And then I also play the guitar, but I play the guitar really badly. In one of the bands I was in once, we had 3 guitar players, and we used to say, I used to say someone was the rhythm guitarist, someone was the lead guitarist, and I was on bad guitar.
All right. Very cool.
All right. So can you just tell us your story a little bit? When and how did you discover that you had aphantasia?
Yeah, sure. I recall an experience when I was I think I was at high school, and my mother and my brother were quite good artists, and I used to marvel at what they would create. They weren't tracing, they weren't copying. I couldn't draw like that. And I asked them one day, how do you do that? I think it was my brother that said, you just, close your eyes and picture a lion or whatever it is you want to draw, and then you just draw that thing. I was like, hang on, what? So you close your eyes and you picture something? I can't. And I was trying. I was like, I can't picture anything. And I think we both had a moment of where, like, I was thinking, you picture something? And he was thinking, you can't picture something? And that's when I first realized, I can't do that thing that these people that I know that are really great at drawing can do. So that was my sort of first understanding that I didn't have that thing, whatever it was. But I didn't discover the term aphantasia until really recently, like in the last maybe 4 or 5 years. And it was only by chance I read something and somebody mentioned, this is what this is called. And I thought, there's a name for it.
How do people react when you tell them about aphantasia?
Well, some people just don't believe it. They're like, what do you mean you can't see anything? And then sometimes I'll do the Apple test on them, and then I'll discover there are some of my friends are able to do that. Is it like stage 6? They can rotate the apple in their mind and they can dissect it. And I'm just like, wow. And I said, basically, you're at the opposite end of the spectrum than I am for that. So to try and help them understand the difference between it. But yeah, I mean, and some people are surprised because I'm quite a creative person.
Yeah, I get that reaction all the time because I'm a very creative person as well. I'm a graphic designer and an artist and a poet and writer and a lot of those things. And so that's the main reaction I get is, how in the world do you do that if you can't visualize? Because, we're all just stuck in our own box of, if you don't do it the way I do it, how in the world do you do it?
Yeah.
Right? All right. The next thing we want you to do is imagine a chicken in your mind. Describe in as much detail as you can what is happening in your mind when you imagine a chicken.
Okay, so 3 things happened. One is that I recall the last time I heard a chicken. I also have a memory of the last time I was in close proximity to a chicken and the very first time I ever encountered a chicken closely. And that particular one, which is a more detailed memory, I can feel the chicken pecking at my hand when I was feeding it.
Really?
Okay.
And what about the sound? Could you hear the chicken in your mind as well?
Yeah.
So we've got the feeling and we've got audio. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, but there's no... I can't see it, I can't see the chicken, but I know that, I know what a chicken, I can recognize a chicken when I see one. Yeah. And I know that they have feathers and a beak, but I just can't call one up in my mind to see it. Yeah.
Okay. So other than some of the basic details, was there anything else associated with the thought? Like, was there any movement in the thought?
Yeah, maybe, because when I could feel the pecking on my hand, I guess there was like a bit of movement there, but not in the other 2.
What about color? Did you think about color at all?
Didn't think about color.
Is there any difference in your thoughts depending on if your eyes are closed or your eyes are open?
I feel like I might be able to access memories easier with my eyes open.
Okay. Is there any dimension associated with the thought? Like, does it seem to be 2D or 3D, or is that just not a thing?
I can recall where I am in space relative to the sound. So I know where the angle that the sound came from when I heard the chicken. The memories that I have of my encounters with the chicken, I recall the spatial relationship between where I was and where the chicken was. And there is context because I remember the scene of where I was, although there's no detail or anything, I know where I was.
Okay, that is so interesting.
It sounds like, and forgive me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but we often talk about this idea of comparing aphantasia to a quote-unquote blind mind's eye. And it almost sounds like you're experiencing something very close to that, where you're in the space and you're experiencing your mental surroundings, but it's almost like you have your eyes closed.
Yeah, I guess it could be a bit like that. Yeah.
And that's what it sounded like to me. It sounds like you're standing on a farm with your eyes closed.
Yeah.
Okay, I have another question about that. It sounds to me like when I said chicken, the experiences you were having were all memory based. You were recalling memories of your experience with chickens.
Yes.
Is that standard for you? Like, Can you think of a chicken you've never seen before?
If I try to imagine a chicken from the future, I will start to conceptually think about, does it have like bionic legs or, but I can't picture it. I'm just thinking, oh yeah, well, a chicken from the future could have these things.
Okay. All right. Yeah. When I asked the questions, I knew it sounded a little odd, but where I was coming from was when I talk to people who are highly visual, there's usually that distinction. There are some people that can picture things, but they can only picture things they've seen before. And there are others where their default is more they create things from their imaginations that they've never seen before.
We're going to talk a little bit more about some general visualization questions. One of the things we talk about a lot is the different phrases we use in our day-to-day language to talk about visualization. And sometimes these words kind of get mixed together and they mean different things to different people. So we wanted to present 4 of these words or phrases we use in everyday language. And those phrases are picture it, imagine it, visualize it, and think of it. So those 4 phrases, do you think those are interchangeable for you? Do they all mean the same thing?
To me, they have slightly different meanings, but I would understand how some people could totally think they're all the same thing. Picture it and visualize it, to me, are very similar in that it's requiring some kind of visual form. Imagine, and what was the other one?
Think of it.
And think of it. Those 2 to me feel easier. Mm-hmm. So I can use my imagination, which means I could draw on all my past experiences or creativity as well. And think of it could just be the concept. I could just think of the concept. So to me, those 2 feel more accessible.
Okay. So if I were to ask you to picture something, would you just default to what you would do with one of those other 2 phrases? Or would your mind try to do something else?
No, you're right. I would default to one of those 2. I would go to the concept probably of what I know of it. Yeah.
Okay. In general, when you close your eyes, what do you see?
I just see, actually, I've just done it then. I can see some of the light from the edge of the computer. That's obviously just the negative of that. Mm-hmm. But there's pretty much nothing there aside from that. Yeah.
Okay. Can you think of nothing if you want to?
I can, but probably for very, very brief periods of time before something starts to come in. I have tried to practice some meditation before where I think of nothing and I don't last very long.
Okay. Do you find yourself talking to yourself out loud a lot?
Yep, I do.
Do you think that's tied to your aphantasia?
I've never thought about that before, actually. Do you guys think there's a relationship between talking out loud and having aphantasia?
I'm starting to. This is a new question that we're just starting to ask people because that has come up a few times in my conversations with people with aphantasia. And I realize that I do that a lot. I find myself talking out loud a lot. But see, I don't have the inner voice either. And so I think that's why I do it, is it just helps to kind of hear it, right? But in your case, I'm not sure. What do you think?
I don't know. I just find myself, and I'm never purposefully really doing it. And it's usually by myself though. I just find myself like chatting away. Or sometimes it's sometimes when I might want a little bit of reassurance, like, oh yeah, come on, or encouragement. No, yeah, you can do that. Or things like that. But I definitely do have an inner, what I call it, an inner monologue or just an internal voice. And it's my voice that I hear.
You know, if I had a voice that sounded that cool, I'd talk to myself a lot more often. Is
it the accent?
I love it.
That is interesting. And like I said, I don't know if there's a tie or not. But one of the questions I have for you is, if you can talk to yourself in your mind and hear it in your voice, then why do you need to speak it out loud?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I hope you keep pursuing that.
Right.
I hope you can find an answer.
Yeah.
Well, everybody's so, unique and individual that I'll probably get different answers all over the map like usual, but that's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Do you feel like you have control over your thoughts?
Not necessarily, although obviously because I'm a therapist, I do know tools and ways of making sure they don't get away on me. So honestly, things will just pop in and I don't feel like I've got too much control.
Yeah. I've compared it before to like herding cats. Like you feel like you might have a couple of ideas of how to, manage the chaos, but it's still chaos.
Yeah, yeah.
If you wanted to memorize something, what would be your process for memorizing it?
I've tried a few tricks before. I think I find words and phrases sometimes quite challenging to memorize. But if I'm thinking about people's names, if I'm trying to memorize somebody's names, if I'm getting introduced to a whole lot of people at once and I'd like to remember their names, I'll often remember a person that also had that name and then try connect them somehow together. A lot of repetition sometimes and rote, and especially hearing. So my undergrad degree was in Te Reo Māori, which is the Indigenous language of New Zealand. And when I was studying for my third year exams, I would quite often record myself telling some of the old pūrākau, the old narratives, and then listen to them back. So a lot of that sort of rote learning and repetition until it became something, much like a song that is really much easier to recall.
Okay. And do you find that all of that works, or do you think your memory is not very good?
I think I've got an awful memory, but sometimes when I really try, I know that I can remember specific things if I work at it. But yeah, I've got just a terrible memory, I think.
Okay. Have you ever had moments of visualization or anything outside the norm, like something that's different from how you normally experience things?
Yep. So when I've taken certain medications before, I've closed my eyes and I've got some visual things going on. So that's obviously drug-induced or, medication-induced. And I can't control those. They're just sort of coming and going and really psychedelic kind of looking things. And I once had a musical hallucination. I was really sleep deprived because I'm an insomniac. I was really sleep deprived and I was in the supermarket and I had been listening to Pink Floyd earlier. And then I walked into the supermarket. There was already a song playing in the supermarket, but that song started to play as if it was coming in over the top and taking over the supermarket music, which was great because the supermarket music wasn't too awesome. And I was just strolling down the aisles having this incredible experience of hearing Shine On You Crazy Diamond. And it was going, because it's quite a long song, and it was going on. And I could have left the supermarket, but I didn't. I wanted to stay in it as long as I could. And I knew there was still this other song playing and I knew what was happening to me. I didn't have headphones on. So I was a little bit fearful. I was thinking, oh God, is this the beginning of some form of psychosis or something? I wasn't quite sure, but it felt really good. It felt amazing. But I also knew I was really sleep deprived. So I imagined that is what brought that on. But I was really lucky that it was an extremely positive experience. And it got to the end of the song, and just as I was coming down to the queue to leave, and then it didn't carry on. It was just that one song in its entirety, and that was it.
Okay, so a lot of people talk about hearing songs in their head or getting songs stuck in their head, but that's in their head. You're saying you could actually hear it with your ears.
Yeah, either it was like the next level of being able to just totally hear it in my head, but it felt like it was out here. It wasn't in there. Yeah, and it was so crystal clear and crisp. Yeah.
All right.
That's amazing, and I wish I had more to say about it, but I'm just trying to wrap my head around it for a sec here.
Yeah, well, I think it can happen when you're really sleep deprived. People can can hallucinate.
Okay, so let's dive a little bit more into your mind audio and see if we can pin that down a little bit more. We're going to do the same thing we did with the 4 phrases. We've already talked about a couple of them. We said, an inner voice or an inner monologue. There's also inner dialogue or self-talk. What about those phrases? Do those kind of all mean the same thing to you, or can you differentiate those at all?
I see self-talk maybe as being more purposeful or intentional, and maybe that's just coming at it from as a therapist, because I quite often will encourage people to change their self-talk. So that to me feels like it can be more purposeful. I would say mine's closer to inner voice, the little narrative of sort of what's just going on for me, like hearing my thoughts in my voice a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So can you identify the pitch and the tone of the voice in your mind?
Yep.
And do you play out conversations in your mind? Do you hear other people in that scenario?
Yes. Yep. If I am recalling or ruminating on, something that's happened, then I will hear the dialogue or, the conversation and hear their voice. Yeah.
Would you say there's always something audible going on in your mind? Does your mind ever shut up?
I would say most of the time, probably 99% of the time, there's something audible happening in there.
So you said earlier that you could hear the chicken. Was that kind of an automatic thing? Like when I said chicken, did you hear it?
Actually, I didn't hear it until I recalled the last time I'd encountered a chicken, which was that time. And then I heard it. Yeah.
Okay. So would you say that's kind of optional? For example, let's just try this. If I say the telephone rang, do you have control over whether you hear a telephone ring or not, or does it just happen?
Oh, man. Now I think I am because when you said that, then I heard the telephone ring, but I wonder if I'm just doing that now because I'm thinking about this, I don't think it happens. I don't think I hear the thing all of the time.
All right. So you mentioned something in your text to me that I'm curious about. So tell us about auditory, tactile synesthesia.
Yeah, so I have this experience sometimes, not all of the time, and it is when I'm listening to particular passages of songs, music, a particular sensation will occur. So it feels as though somebody's sort of brushing past me like this. So it's like that sensation you might feel on your skin from air pressure, if that makes sense. So it doesn't feel like someone's actually touching my skin, but more like the air around it is shifting somehow. Mm. And I have that sensation in particular songs, and it's always the same part of the song, and it's always the same sensation. I do think that's more unusual to feel sensations on the outside of your body. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is really interesting.
That's different.
Yeah. And there's this one particular one where it actually feels as if like there's a little object in space or something, and that it's swirling. It swirls around me. Yeah.
Oh,
now,
okay.
I don't know whether there's something in the music, like maybe the music pans from different into different channels, which means it moves across and around. So it might move from left front to left right to right back to left right. That makes the sensation swirl. I haven't looked into it too deeply to understand musically what is causing that particular sensation.
So that is really cool. You hear music and feel air movement around you.
Yeah, sounds bizarre, eh? And it's not scary.
Awesome.
Yeah, it is pretty awesome. It's not scary at all. It's just it feels almost like just the next level of feeling it on the inside, because
right.
It does happen to be always passages of music that I feel quite moved by. But then could that be I'm moved by it because I'm also having this physical sensation? Which way around does it go?
Right. And it's interesting because on a lower level, I can kind of understand what you're talking about because, like I said, I'm a very tactile thinker, and I think about things in sensations a lot. Certain lyrics and things will bring up things in my mind that will cause me to feel things. And I can understand that, but a lot of that is very voluntary for me. And it sounds like this is less on the voluntary and more this particular sound, particular type of music is just bringing about these things automatically.
Yeah. And I do find that it can change depending on the quality of the stereo. I think that does change the level at which I experience it. So, for example, if I had headphones on and I was listening, I would experience it. It's right there. But perhaps if somebody had a stereo where the treble was right down, I might not experience it in the same way. So it's almost like all of those particular things need to be there in order for it to occur in that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
What does the phrase, I have a song stuck in my head, mean to you?
It's just that song that's persistent, that's in there, that isn't voluntary and won't go away even when you're like, I don't want this in there anymore.
So when it comes to your mind audio, on a scale from 1 to 10, how much does it resemble actual hearing?
The musical hallucination, let's say that's at 11.
Okay.
So, but this would be like a 10. You know, I can hear a song in all its parts in my head and, recall it quite easily.
Okay, cool. We want to delve into that a little bit more too and see a little bit more what's happening in your mind when it comes to music or imagining songs. So right now, if you could, I want you to imagine a song that involves multiple instruments and vocals.
Okay. Oh, yeah. No, I've got one. Yep.
So can you hear all of the instruments or just some of them?
All of them.
Can you hear tonal changes as the melody plays out?
Yeah.
Can you change the tempo by speeding it up and slowing it down?
Yep.
Okay. Can you imagine switching instruments in and out? For example, could you hear a guitar as a trumpet?
Yep.
Really?
What?
All right.
That's the one where we normally stump people.
I had the song Psycho Killer in my head, and then I just switched up and I could totally hear the trumpet in there. Yeah.
Very cool. All right. Can you make the singer sound deeper and higher at will?
Yep.
Okay. Can you imagine Yoda singing the song instead?
Yeah, I can. That would actually be quite a cool mix, that Psycho Killer with Yoda singing the main part.
All right. Can you imagine the song played in a different genre? So, for example, could you hear Psycho Killer in bluegrass or country or something?
Yep.
All right. Okay. What about the volume? Can you adjust the volume louder and quieter in your mind?
That one doesn't feel so easy to do.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't. Oh, yep. Okay. I just tried tuning it up and it worked. So I must be.
Oh, wow. All right. So, you're pretty off the charts there when it comes to that mind audio and being able to manipulate it. That is pretty cool.
Yeah. And that's interesting because that's what we would call audio hyperphantasia. So you're aphantasia with visuals, but with audio, you're on the opposite side of that spectrum.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic.
Yeah. I feel really lucky to be able to do all of that. But to be honest, I thought everybody could hear music in their head. So I was surprised to hear that wasn't a thing.
That's the thing we've learned is that it varies. Every sense can vary completely in each person. And just because you have none of one sense, it doesn't mean you don't have a good sense of another.
Yeah. And to appreciate the senses that you can access, and use. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Spread laughter all around with funny and witty t-shirts from Shane's Brain. Check out fan favorites like Once in a Blue Moon, Tired of Laundry, and the Ramalama Ding Dong shirts, all on shanesbraindomain.com. Let's talk about the other senses. So, smell. Do you have any smell in your mind?
Yeah, I can imagine the smell. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
This is where it gets a little tricky because it's hard to tell exactly what we're talking about. But again, when it comes to visual, I can't see anything in my mind. When it comes to hearing, you can. When it comes to smell, in relation to the same kind of thing, does it feel like, yes, you can have the sensation of smell in your mind?
It feels like I can remember the smells of things. So if you said, what does mint smell like? I wouldn't smell it right here and now, but I would remember what mint smelled like.
Okay. Does that resemble reality at all? If I asked you to put that on a scale of 1 to 10, could you do it?
No, I'm just getting like mint. Yeah, I know what that smells and tastes like.
Okay.
But that's all I'm really getting. Yeah.
Okay. So you talked about touch earlier. On a scale from 1 to 10, how much is the touch similar to reality?
Yeah, I think I'm probably further up the scale in that one. Just simply even because, when you were talking about the chicken and I felt the chicken pecking in my hand, and I know so clearly what that feels like. I feel like I can close my eyes and feel that happening.
Okay. So on that scale from 1 to 10, what would you give that one?
Would it be like a 7? I don't know.
I understand how difficult it is to answer some of these questions. We're trying to reach out into the unknown and pull something out. So
I'm going to give it a 7 because it's not like, I don't think I can imagine feeling every single thing, but I do know there are certain things where, that's such an easy feeling and I can imagine having it right now. So, yeah.
Okay, so since we're a little iffy on it, I want to ask you some additional questions, and it might help us nail that down a little bit more.
Cool.
And compare it to Cole because he's a 10 on this one. So maybe we can nail it down. I'm really curious here. So I want you to imagine yourself typing on a keyboard.
Yep.
Can you feel the space in between the keys?
Yep. Now, I chose a typewriter, not a keyboard.
Okay.
So that I could feel the little indents in the spaces between the,
Okay, just for the purposes of this, and I love the feeling of typewriters too. I love to imagine the feeling of typewriters. I think they're awesome. For the purpose of this, I just want to narrow it down to those specifics. Imagine a very clunky library computer with the very big clunky keyboards.
Yeah.
Can you feel the little divots in between each of the keys, very specific, nuanced feeling there?
By divots, do you mean the spaces between each key?
Yeah.
If I run my hand over it, yep.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. Can you feel the pressure and weight of each key as you press down on it?
Yep. There's a really sticky return key over here. It's a little bit annoying.
Okay. Can you feel the texture of each key?
Yep, the texture, that kind of plasticky, a little bit rough, yep.
Can you feel the temperature of each key?
Yes, but I tell you what, the typewriter was colder.
Okay,
yeah.
That is so cool. Okay, now imagine that the keyboard is suddenly furry. Can you feel that?
Yeah.
Okay, and now your keyboard is made of Jell-O. Can you feel that?
Yeah.
I helped design a lot of this part, and the interesting thing I was trying to figure out with the Jell-O, because when I imagine it's made of Jell-O, I can almost feel that threshold of when the Jell-O's about to break. I can feel that fragility in the Jell-O. Can you feel that?
Oh, well, to be honest, mine was a little bit different. Mine was just almost a pool of jelly. My fingers were typing like a word or something, but going into it.
Yeah.
It was all ugh. Yeah.
Sticky.
Yeah.
It's a gross sensation, but it's also kind of cool.
Okay, so I can just tell you right now, you are the first person with aphantasia that I've ever had have this high touch. I've had others that have the sound, the hearing thing, but I've never interviewed anyone with aphantasia that has this high level of touch. So I'm really fascinated by that. I'm not sure what it means, but
I didn't even really know. So I've learned something.
All right. When you read a novel, how well can you think about what the characters and surroundings might look like?
I'll be honest, I don't often choose to read novels or fiction. I prefer nonfiction. Honestly, I actually like listening to the audiobooks better. So through choice, I don't actually choose to read a lot. I guess I'm just remembering what things look like from my memory and then conceptually constructing the environment maybe. But there's not a lot going on there in terms of seeing.
Okay.
Do you feel like aphantasia plays a role in you not enjoying fiction or preferring audiobooks?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that's certainly the case in my case.
Yeah.
When you're reading, whatever you're reading, do you hear sounds and voices in your mind, narration, any of that?
Yeah, I hear my own voice narrating it. And I'm actually a very slow reader because I actually have to hear every word read out. So I can't really speed read because I need to hear my voice finishing it all. Yeah, which is a real pain sometimes.
Interesting. Do you experience any of the other senses in your mind when you read?
I don't know. I know when I'm reading nonfiction and it might be a biography about music, then I'll hear, if they're talking about a particular song, then I'll obviously listen to that song in my head while I'm reading. Oh, actually, and sometimes reading autobiographies, I will hear that person reading the story. So it's not strictly true that it's always me.
Do you have to know what the other person sounds like to do that?
Well, I think in all cases, probably I have known what they sound like, or at least I've constructed my impression of how they would sound.
Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely in some cases, I like to read autobiographies as well. And definitely in some cases, if I know what they sound like, I'll hear that. But if I were to read like The Diary of Anne Frank, I have no idea what Anne Frank sounds like. So I think I would just read it in my voice. So I was just curious as to what you would do in that case.
Okay, what would I do in that case? I do think I might try and put on an Anne Frank-ish kind of voice, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. I was just curious.
Yeah. But I'm not 100% sure on that. Maybe it would turn into my voice eventually or something. I'm not sure. But I'm just sort of hearing a young girl's kind of voice. Yeah.
I'm curious real quick again about the feeling and the touch. So if you're reading something and it says, and then they rounded the corner and stubbed their toe on the table, can you feel that?
Yeah.
I can't read things with high amounts of injury, man.
Yeah. But I do think that is optional for me to feel that. Like you just said it then, so I tried to get that feeling and I got it instantly. But I don't know that every time I read it, that would happen for me. But is that what happens for you, Cole? Do you feel everything like that you read?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's all the time, but it's definitely not always optional.
Okay. Now we're going to talk a little bit about sleep and dreams. So is it easy for you to fall asleep?
No.
Do you have any techniques that work for you?
No, I did try listening to shipwreck tales, audio shipwreck tales for a while, and I found that was really helpful. There's this man called John McChrystal who has a series of recorded shipwreck tales. And I found his voice very soothing. Even though he was talking about calamity at sea, there was something about his voice that was really quite soothing. And following the story. And often I would fall asleep before the end of the story, but that doesn't really work all of the time. I am an insomniac, so I have medication if I really need to get a good night's sleep.
Have you ever tried counting sheep?
Like when I was really young and I was just like, what? And I actually really tried, when I think my mum said, just try counting sheep. And I was like, what does that mean? And she's like, oh, there they go. They're jumping over the fence. And I really tried to see them jumping over the fence and nothing really happened there.
Do you dream?
Yes. Yeah, I do.
Okay. Would you say your dreams are visual?
Yes.
Okay. How vivid and detailed are they?
They feel pretty vivid and detailed.
Are they in color?
Yes.
What about the other senses in your dreams? Can you hear, smell, taste, touch in your dreams?
I'm pretty sure. I mean, I can't remember the last dream I had where I ate something, but I reckon I could taste in my dreams too. And sometimes I can do that lucid dreaming thing, very rarely, but if I've had sleep paralysis, the way that I snap myself out of that, because I don't find that a very enjoyable experience, is to remember and understand that, this is what's happening. I've got sleep paralysis. That means that I'm kind of more aware than I usually would be. I'm going to go flying, and then I might try like levitating up. But my problem is I always sort of end up just hovering. Just hovering outside and never really knowing where to go. It's like, and I'm just hovering outside the bedroom or something, So that's my limitation of being able to lucid dream.
Okay. Are your dreams in first person or third person?
First person, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to talk about memory real fast. If you want to recall a memory, how does it manifest in your mind?
It's much like when someone asks me to picture something. It will be like I'll go back to remembering where I was in space, in relationship to the people that were there or the emotions that were happening at the time.
So it's very spatial.
Very spatial. And in fact, one thing that I was going to talk to you about was in any traumatic memories that I've had where I'm recalling those, I'm actually not in the first person in those ones. I am slightly above and to the left in all of those memories. So spatially, I am aware that I am outside of myself. It's a bit more objective or something. I don't know if that even makes any sense. But spatially, I am removed from that memory a little bit.
So would you say that you're experiencing it in quote unquote third person?
Yeah, that's what it feels like, although it's always third person, and I feel like I'm just above myself and to the left in each of those times. And I do know that with people that have had something like PTSD, and they might have something called dissociative flashbacks where they recall things in the third person. So I don't know whether this is connected to that in any way.
How does that work if you're not having any visuals? It's just a pure spatial feeling?
Yeah, it's in space. So I recall, my memory is of where I was in relation to different people and things and my surroundings, my context. But I am, it's so hard to explain. But when I'm recalling that, usually I am recalling it from where I am in space, right? My normal typical memories will be from where I am in space. But when I'm recalling something that was slightly more traumatic, it's not recalling it from exactly where I was. It's recalling it from up and to the left of where I was.
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it sounds like she's just got her eyes closed again. Because I know exactly what she's talking about, except for the fact that I can see it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I don't have anything like that at all.
No?
No. So that is really interesting to me.
Is there emotion attached to your memories?
Yes.
How would you describe how your mind stores information?
Sometimes orderly, sometimes randomly, but a lot of the time I think through association.
Okay. Do you associate your mind with an area or a space?
No. Can you give me an example?
I guess another way to ask it is, does your mind feel like a place where you can go and explore?
Oh.
Like, does it feel like an actual space of any sort?
Right. Well, now that you say that, I could imagine that it was quite a few different things. Yeah, but not a particular place as such.
For some examples, like we've had some people say like, oh, my mind is like a filing cabinet where everything is organized and color coded and whatnot. Or we've had people say my mind is like a messy desk where everything's cluttered, but I know where everything is.
Yeah. Mine might be like a chaotic car park. It's supposed to be some order there, but people aren't following the rules and cars are going everywhere, and you've just walked out of the supermarket and you can't find your car. You don't know where it is. Like, I guess, a messy car park maybe.
I had someone with aphantasia once tell me that it feels like an outdoor sky with a dome over it.
Wow.
So that's why we asked the question, like, I never know what we're going to get.
Yeah.
But when you start talking about the metaphors and things, does it feel like there's any sort of compartments in your mind? Like, I'm going to put this memory over here, or this particular thing is important, so I'm going to store it over here. Does anything like that happen in your mind?
I don't think so. I think a lot of my processing happens through emotion. I think it goes through that filter.
Another phrase we have in our society is search your mind. Do you feel like that's something you can do? If somebody told you to search your mind for something particular, do you feel like you could do that? And if so, How would that work?
I do feel like I could do that. I would probably apply quite a holistic approach to that. So I would search my mind in terms of my understanding of whatever the thing was they were asking me to search for. And then I would search my mind for my experiences of that. And then I would search my mind for different perspectives, like what perspectives could be understood about that, or maybe search my mind for putting myself in somebody else's position and how they might see that.
Okay, I like it.
So is it easy for you to stay in the present moment?
I don't think by default it's not that easy. I have to be quite conscious in doing that.
Okay.
Do you think that is primarily because of the sound in your head? Is that what makes it hard? Because I know a lot of people with 5 sense aphantasia, it may be a little easier because our minds are quiet and dark. Right.
Yeah, true.
But so would you think that's where the struggle lies, is in that audio?
I think that's definitely a part of it. Yeah.
Okay. This next question is one that you texted to me, so we're not sure quite what you mean by it.
What is the role of the teacher?
My previous work, I was a school teacher, and I do think that school teachers would be great for them to have an awareness of aphantasia, because a lot of the expectations or tasks that children are expected to do at school and the judgments that come from those could affect a child's self-esteem. And so I'm just quite concerned with the impact on that and the child's sense of their own ability if the teacher wasn't aware of aphantasia. So I think that the teacher's actions can impact greatly on a child's sense of themselves, that it's really important that they're aware of things like aphantasia.
When you were a teacher, were you aware of it?
I wasn't aware of it, but the first school that I taught at was an incredible school that was based on the passions and the interests of the children. And so we were really encouraging and motivating of the children that we worked with in their own areas of interest. And I would say compared to other schools, we were not that competitive. You know, we didn't celebrate competitiveness as much as people really giving things a go and exploring things and discovering new parts of themselves. And so I feel like I was really encouraging in that role.
If you could wave a magic wand and get rid of your aphantasia, would you do it?
I would, just for a trial, just to see what it's like. Yeah. But you know what? It hasn't affected me negatively having it, you know. It's not something that I see as a disability or anything like that. And like you talked about earlier, it's actually aided creativity sometimes. So it's not like I feel super jealous, but I'd be really intrigued to know what it was like to see things. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I always say. I would love to take it for a test drive.
Yeah.
See what it's like.
Yeah.
Well, some of us have to live with it. So I want to take aphantasia for a test drive.
All right, Nikki. Well, that is pretty much it. Is there anything else you would like to talk about or say before we sign off?
I'm just really intrigued about how you two must have amazing conversations together around being so different. And what has that been like for you to know that the other person is quite different?
As Cole can attest, it's taken up a lot of our lives, this topic. We've talked about it so much over the years. And my wife has hyperphantasia, so she's on the other end of the spectrum as me. It's really helped our relationship once we learned about it, and just all the little interesting situations and discoveries over the years. Like, it's been fascinating. It's been a positive experience to talk about all of the differences between people. And that's really what led me to writing the book and having the podcast, is because I just got so interested in how beautifully unique and different each individual is. There's no way to paint it with a broad brush or put everybody in a certain box. It's like each individual person is so unique and interesting. I'll talk to anybody and everybody about it, because I learned something new every time I talk to somebody, just as I did tonight with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your curiosity. And I've really enjoyed talking with you both. And I've really appreciated the way that you've interacted and made me feel as comfortable as I possibly could be.
That's really our goal with the podcast, is we're super curious about aphantasia. But first and foremost, this podcast is about you. This is about the person we're talking to, and really trying to narrow it down to their personal experiences and understand them as a unique and beautiful person. And I love that we get to do that.
Will you be doing anything with all of this information that you collect from all of these guests? Do you collate it? Do you number crunch it? And
I've tried so hard. I love psychology from the analytical side of it. And I've tried to create like a categorization tree, try to like create some sort of categorization. But like Shane said, every single person we've talked to is so 100% unique that it's like, okay, how do I fit this new information and like categorize it at all? I'm still trying. I haven't given up on it. It's really difficult, though.
I bet.
Yeah, and the deeper you dive into it, the more complex and complicated it gets. There's just all these different branches. Cole and I talk about all the time, well, we should do an episode on that. And we never get to it because there's so much to wade through. And sometimes when you're wading through it, it just gets overwhelming. We do what we can with it and we try and process it all. And really what we end up coming back to every time is everybody's unique.
Yeah.
And that's the main takeaway.
Yeah.
All right, Nikki. Well, we appreciate your time. We appreciate your answers. It was very insightful and very interesting. And we appreciate it. And we hope you have a great rest of your day over there in New Zealand.
Have a good tomorrow.
Yeah. Yep. You guys are going to love tomorrow.
All right.
Okay. Bye.
All right.
Bye. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, follow, and engage with us, and share it with your friends and family as we continue to explore this fascinating subject. For additional information about this episode or Shane's Brain, check out the show notes. Thanks for listening to the Discovering Your Mind podcast. You are beautifully unique.